So I just found a bit of yes. And let's get into this. I'm gonna have to take some breaks between this because I don't want to blow my top. Let's get started.
I know there are people who don't think being transgender is a thing, and this video is not for them.
Then why are you making your title says trans women are not biologically male?
This video is for the people who say, yes, trans women are women, but they are still biologically male.
Okay, I think I know where you got this mixed up. Trans women are still chromosomally male because in order to be a trans, you have to have been born only one sex, but your gender has to not work. I'm going to avoid repeating this over and over again because I tried doing this in a first take and I literally kept repeating itself. So I'm going to try to make this simple. When I do this, this means, not mesh. This means mesh for shorthand.
Because while their intentions might be good, the impact that these words have is actually very harmful. Trans women are not male, and saying that they are allows some people to justify the mistreatment of trans people. So I'm going to assume that you already really believe that trans women are women.
Of course, I believe that because when you're a trans woman, you identify and live as a woman. It's not that hard to understand. But I'm suspecting that you're going to try to use some weird contradicting things. Let's see.
If you don't believe that, this video isn't meant to convince you.
Then why are you making a video with this title? This seems more like an argument and a thesis. Why make a video? Oh, that's right, because you want to do an echo. You want a virtue signal. Virtue signal!
Maybe instead of leaving an angry comment, you could go do some research into what it means to be transgender. I will leave some links in the description to some very good resources to get you started.
I have done research.
Alright, so let's say that you're trying to be a good ally to trans people and you heard that sex and gender are two different things.
Why do you need to try? If you are a good ally, then you are a good ally. That's my first big problem. Oh yeah, once you met many trans people and find that they're just basically, you would automatically be an ally. Take one of my favorites, Blair White. Nice woman. Was born a dude. Now was a woman. Which is pretty cool. Let's move on.
Sex is biological and gender is a social construct.
Yes, because your sex and your sex expression of sex is based on biology. You know, those things that deal with your organs or your hormones and the structures of your body.
That's not entirely true. Sex and gender are two different things, but they're both partly social constructs, just in different ways.
No. Gender is the social. Gender is not a social. It's a psychological construct. Sex is a biological construct, and gender expression is the social construct, or just an expression of the gender in a social setting. For instance, tomboy, or an effeminate man.
For a long time, gender has been assigned to people based on their perceived sex. A doctor looks at a baby's genitals and determines what gender it will be raised as. In our culture, this used to be unquestionable fact. You were raised as the gender you were assigned at birth, and being transgender wasn't an option.
That's because people didn't understand that. Modern psychology is barely 100 years old, and the fact that you're mad at people for doing it is, or bringing it up, is irrelevant to the discussion. And even when we finally did discover it, it took a while to. Yes, this stuff happens. Things progress over time. There's probably, I'm betting in 50 years, going to say, God, I can't believe people back in the 2010s didn't know about this. How do you not know about hyperdrives or space elevators or genetic modification on a molecular level?
This doesn't mean that trans people didn't exist. We've existed as long as humans have existed, but being transgender was not a mainstream topic of discussion.
Yes, it wasn't mainstream, but it doesn't mean it wasn't known. Many cultures actually used to think of transgender people as something kind of special. They used to think of some cultures actually believed that they were divine. These concepts have been well aware of. In fact, in some Native American tribes, if you were gay or trans, you were typically stay behind and be if you're male, you'd likely be a teacher or a shaman, and if you're female, you'd likely be a scout or something. It was not an unheard of thing.
Today, many of us recognize that gender is far more complicated than a person's perceived sex.
Yes, there's a lot of hormones and genetics involved in that. But I bet you're going to get into that. Let's get back to it.
And we're able to acknowledge that people can be transgender. Gender was a social construct before, and still is now, but how we construct it has changed. Now we can say that your gender is based on how you identify because we realized that basing gender on perceived sex was oppressive.
Okay, it's not really oppressive, it was just not very well understood.
Again, I'm not really talking about society at large because a lot of people still don't fully understand what it means to be transgender, but I mean within trans-accepting community.
But you're going to explain it all to us, right? Or are you just going to make us go research it like you want us to?
However, even within these communities, binary sex has, for some reason, stuck around as the same kind of unquestionable fact that we used to think gender was.
Because it's defined by science and biology.
I've made a video before about intersex conditions and how sex isn't a perfect binary.
Intersex is not a derivation from the binary. It is simply a genetic abnormality, and I mean that in not a bad way. It's just an unusual trait. I've heard of everything from full-blown hermaphroditism to guys being born with micropenises, women who are actually born with testicles. There was a case in China like that. I actually found this quite interesting, and I've done my actual research on it. It's a documented. There are many documented cases. They're not very common, but they do occur. Doesn't make them a new gender. It just makes them a hormonal or genetic disorder. They're still technically XY or XX, with the exception of a few things, which you have XXX or XYX. But those are very unusual, and those are usually really bad, like metabolic disorders.
But for now, let's just talk about what it means to be male or female.
It means if you're born male or female, typically for cis, we have an X and a Y, and that's how it is. Again, this is the gender. This is the sex. This is the gender.
Because I would argue that sex needs to go through the same change that gender has already gone through.
We have science that says it's fine the way it is. You have a degree in biology? I don't think so. Why don't you talk to a biologist? They'll probably laugh you out the lab, or give you kind of a by the gods look.
It's not a static fact. It's a social construct.
No, it's a fact. Again, you should go talk to someone with a degree in biology and organic chemistry. Maybe biology and medicine.
I'm sure that some people are having this knee-jerk reaction that sex is based on biology and you can't change a person's biology.
That's not completely true. We're working on genetic engineering, and you can't completely change the biology, but you can influence it, because a lot of it is hormones and other chemicals.
But that's exactly what we used to say about gender. Sex is a way of categorizing humans based on a combination of a few traits: chromosomes, genitals, gonads, hormones, and secondary sex characteristics.
Okay, I'm listening. Go on.
Like facial hair or breast development. Most people never have their chromosomes tested. They're not tested at birth, and they're not tested at regular checkups.
Because typically they're not necessary. The only time you typically test it when something comes up. That's when you either do like culture tests in the mouth, blood tests, and even chromosomal tests. This is usually done when you have things like cancer or an unusual expression of traits. But testing of chromosomes is typically not necessary.
Unless your doctor suspects that something might be wrong with your chromosomes, you'll probably never have them tested in your life, and you certainly can't tell a person's chromosomes by looking at them. Hormones are also not visible without a test, and genitals and gonads are usually not visible most of the time.
But you can see the effects of said thing. And by the way, gonads not being available, well, I guess they're not visible technically on guys. Their outlines are, but yeah, you can see the effect. I mean, I can't see wind directly, but I can see it influencing the trees.
So the way that most people have of determining someone's sex is simply their secondary sex characteristics that developed in puberty. Before puberty, children with penises and children with vaginas are really not that different.
Right. I mean, for the most part, that's not... Of course, guys are going to have slightly deeper voices than girls when they're younger, but again, you're not telling us anything we don't know already.
It's the rush of hormones around puberty that begins to develop the secondary sex characteristics. People with penises tend to develop facial hair, gain muscle mass, and get a deeper voice.
Yep.
People with vaginas tend to develop breasts, get wider hips, and have more subcutaneous fat.
Well, maybe not in my case.
But these are not perfect differentiators of sex. Some people with penises don't develop much, if any, facial hair, while some develop beards, and the amount of facial hair that they have doesn't make them more or less male.
That's irrelevant. What you're looking at is a genetic factor, and possibly a regional factor. People, for instance, from the Eastern Europe tend to have a lot more hair, largely body hair and even facial hair. People from Mediterranean roots. My cousin is half Spaniard, and when he was 16, he started growing a mustache. I didn't start getting any facial hair until I was in my 20s, my early 20s. But as you have seen in my past videos, I can grow facial hair. But again, the amount of facial hair is not indicative. You're bringing up something that is partial. You're acting like they're linked.
The same goes for people with vaginas. Some of them will develop large breasts, some of them will develop small breasts, but neither of those is more or less female.
Again, you're talking about genetic traits. This is not... There's also going to be hormonal things. While I agree with what you're saying, you're not...
There's a lot of overlap between these characteristics. Some people with vaginas will have deeper voices than some people with penises, and some people with penises will be shorter than some people with vaginas.
Okay, height has nothing is ancillary when it comes to sex. I have met short guys. I have met tall women. It is actually largely partly to do with other traits. There are traits that determine height. For instance, I am about 5'9". My brother, who is 17, is 5'1", and my sister is 5'2". So we kind of run a interesting height line. We all come from the same father, but the genetic traits we got vary. Again, it's a whole chromosome thing. Height, these are irrelevant.
It's not like all people with penises fit into one box and all people with vaginas fit into another box.
Of course, that's obvious. I mean, you can have tall men and short men and tall women, or vice versa. Height and voices vary among all of us.
It's like they're all in the same box, but people with penises tend to hang out on one side and people with vaginas tend to hang out on the other.
No, that's the way biology happens. Men typically tend to have certain traits. Women typically have other traits. It can't really be helped, except for when you get hormone therapy or when you get gene therapy.
Plus, all of these secondary sex characteristics can be changed, either through hormones or surgery.
Yes, with the right amount of surgery and the right amount of money, I can have hair transplanted here, or here. I don't know how they do that, or with the right hormone, they can start growing more facial hair. Or with gene therapy.
When people assigned female at birth take testosterone, they tend to get deeper voices and grow more facial hair, while people assigned male at birth can take estrogen and develop breasts and more subcutaneous fat.
That can also happen if you're like me and you eat too much after being on Adderall for several years, as prescribed by my doctor, and then suddenly being taken off and you suddenly get a craving for McDonald's and chocolate lava cakes. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to go on a tangent. Back to the video.
And if puberty blockers are taken before hormones, a person assigned female at birth might never experience a female natal puberty, or vice versa for people assigned male at birth.
No fucking shit.
So the sex you were assigned at birth doesn't necessarily tell you what secondary sex characteristics you'll have later in life.
That's freaking obvious. Because things can happen. There's things like epigenetics and hormones.
That means that telling someone you know their sex based on their secondary sex characteristics is just not true.
Although, you're right. It's typically a good bet if I see someone with a pair of breasts and a curving that, there's a good chance they're female. Or if I see a person with a beard and more muscle mass, there's a good chance they're male. We typically go on it's called pattern recognition. It's something humans are exceptionally good at. That's why we develop things like numbers. It's the ability to recognize patterns. Men typically have facial hair, muscle, and, narrower hips. Women typically have wider hips, breasts, and higher pitched voices.
But you still think you can tell someone's sex based on their genitals or gonads?
Good chance, but again, there's always exceptions, as I mentioned with the Chinese case.
Well, genitals can be changed with surgery. Some people assigned male at birth have vaginas, thanks to a surgery called vaginoplasty. Some people assigned female at birth have penises, thanks to a surgery called phalloplasty.
Wow, it's like you're influencing biology to express a sexual. I told you, it's all in the biology.
So genitals aren't a great indicator, and gonads, so ovaries or testes, are often removed in the case of testicular or ovarian cancer. But if a woman has her ovaries removed due to cancer, is she no longer female? If a man has his testes removed due to cancer, is he no longer male? I don't think so, and I don't think you can say that gonads define a person's sex without believing that.
No, they're just sterile. It's actually not an uncommon thing. Lance Armstrong had one of his testicles removed due to testicular cancer. Again, we're not talking... Again, gonads are probably the least of the things that you should be talking about. Again, if I had got in an accident and I lost my testicles, I'd still be male. I'd probably have to take hormone treatment to maintain my muscle mass, because cases where men are castrated, they typically they lose muscle. That was the case with eunuchs back during ancient times, when you have guys who would be castrated and become servants of, like, the Emperor of China.
So out of the 5 ways we have of determining someone's sex, 4 of those 5, hormones, secondary sex characteristics, genitals, and gonads, cannot be accurately used to determine someone's sex.
You're right, but I think you're mixing up precision and accuracy. You see, you can more precisely determine them, but not accurately. And I don't want to get into the semantics of precision versus accuracy, so I'll just post a link in below for the definitions.
For example, if someone was assigned male at birth but took puberty blockers and hormones and had a vaginoplasty, they would have female hormones, secondary sex characteristics, and genitals. So 3 of their 5 ways of determining sex would be female. They wouldn't have male or female gonads at that point, and let's assume their chromosomes are XY. That means that 3/5 of the sex criteria point to female, and only 1/5 points to male.
No shit.
And if you believe that sex is an unchanging biological fact, that couldn't be possible.
I never said sex was unchanging. I did, but your video states that sex is not biologically determined. Based on the fact you list hormones, secondary character traits, and genitals, those are all biological things. I mean, they are made of organic things and have to do with a person's biology. You take hormones, they influence your secondary. That's an expression of your biology, and the genitals are expression of your biology, which means sex is biological because it deals with the body. It's anatomical. And yes, chromosomally you're still male, but still chromosomally you're still male.
But it is. Here's where people say, well, you can't change your chromosomes, and yeah, that's correct. But if you...
I'm working on that. I'm waiting for the day where I can literally take a shot and then just take these off and have 2015 vision. That would be freaking great. Wouldn't it be? They are working on that. We already genetically modify goats to create spider silk. Maybe in like a few years they'll be able to 3D print like sex organs and genetically engineer you to be the opposite sex.
If you want to argue that sex is entirely determined by chromosomes, then you're arguing against the definition of what we call biological sex.
Again, the sex chromosomes are a huge determining factor, but they're not the only factor.
Because sex has never been only about chromosomes, it's been about all 5 of these traits. And tell me, what good does dividing people based on their chromosomes do? If chromosomes don't determine your hormones, secondary sex characteristics, genitals, or gonads, what purpose do they serve in differentiating people?
They typically are very good at determining what again, all those will be. But again, there are rare cases. They're still influenced by biology.
The answer is, they serve no purpose. There's no reason to divide XX people and XY people. That is an arbitrary distinction that has no effect on how the person looks or behaves or navigates the world. You can't know someone's chromosomes by looking at them, and even if you could, it wouldn't give you any useful information about the person. That's the point I'm trying to make. Sex is not a biological fact because it is determined by things that are largely changeable.
You can change biology. I can cut off my hand. That means I've changed a portion of my biology. I've changed part of my circulatory system because it no longer goes out to my fingers. You can manipulate biology. That's what geneticists, that's what surgeons do, that's what doctors do. I can take medication that will affect my blood pressure or affect my stress levels or stimulate my neurochemistry. That's affecting my biology. Body. So yes, sex is determined by the body. I don't get why you don't get this. It's you should have paid attention in your biology class. That's probably why you don't get this. It's probably why it's so.
And the only part of it that is unchangeable doesn't have any real world effect. So it is just as much a social construct as gender is.
No, again, if it affects gender is up here. Biology is the rest. Gender, sex, cis, trans.
But I'm not saying that for a trans person to be trans, they have to have all the surgeries and take all the hormones.
I know. There are a few I've met. They're white.
A trans person is trans if they claim that identity.
Yes and no. I mean, to be trans, you have to be moving towards being in the opposite. Yes, you can.
A trans person is trans if they claim that identity, because a cis person doesn't become trans when they have their ovaries removed due to cancer. And a trans person isn't cis just because they can't afford hormones. Having a vagina doesn't make you a female, regardless of whether you were born with it or got it through surgery. Gender is about your identity, and therefore, so is sex.
Sex is biology. You just proved it by mentioning hormones and gonads and yeah.
The fact that sex is so fluid means that thinking of sex as a binary, unmoving fact of life is just wrong.
So the stupidity.
So if you're a trans woman, you're female. If you're a trans man, you're male. And if you're neither a man nor a woman, then you're neither male nor female.
Then you gotta be a freak. Then you're obviously a progenitor. That means you're some sort of third gender. No, that doesn't exist. Again, you're either XX or XY. It's again. Now, as I explained, you are male or female, depending on your biology. Now, if your biology is being geared towards to you being anatomically female, then good for you. Or if you're being geared up, but there is no third gender.
Biological sex has to undergo the same paradigm shift that gender did. We need to stop. Biological sex has to undergo the same paradigm shift that gender did.
Go tell the biologist. Go tell the biologist and the anatomists and the doctors. I don't want to see how they react.
We need to start thinking about it as a social construct rather than an inarguable fact. Because
maybe that's because you have this big Adam's apple. So it makes us wonder, are you really a trans person or just trying to get attention? You know, like people who claim they are autistic. I hate that because I am autistic. I have a diagnosis.
Because when people say that a trans woman is biologically male, they use that as a way to attack trans people. They use it as an excuse to exclude us from bathrooms, locker rooms, and other women's spaces. It's just a more subtle and more socially acceptable way of discriminating against trans people. You might mean well by saying that sex and gender are two different things, but I think it's important to emphasize that both are social constructs based on your...
Okay, so that took forever. This is just, I didn't get this fucker. I can't believe I sat through that. You know what? If you guys want me to do more of these videos and have me suffer and enjoy watching me suffer, please subscribe and hit that like button. Maybe you. Anyway, my name's Dan. I can't believe I sat through that. I will see you later. Bye.